Maybe you just clicked out of curiosity. Or maybe, without realizing it, you were looking for a quiet space where words arrive gently and silence is part of the conversation. I've shared this story with care, like weaving memories, pain, and hope together, hoping that somewhere along the way, you might see yourself in it. If that happens, even just for a moment, stay a while, listen as far as you can, and if you feel like it, leave a sign. It doesn't have to be anything big. Sometimes, a simple "I'm here" is enough to change everything. If you like what you hear, consider liking, sharing, or commenting, or subscribing if you want to stay connected. No pressure, just gratitude. Thanks for being here. They said it was just a staff appreciation night. Nothing fancy. Just a dinner to recognize the hard work of the hospital staff over the past year. Doctors, nurses, admin, janitors, everyone. At least, that's how it was pitched. My mom, Dr. Karen Whitmore, yes, literally a Karen, is the chief of internal medicine at Hamilton Regional, a high-ranking, highly visible position that she wears like a second skin. My younger sister Brooke is in her second year of residency there. She's what you'd call the hospital darling. Photogenic, smart enough, and always in the front row for awards and photos. Then there's me. I'm Rachel Whitmore, 33, single mom, full-time RN in med-surg, mostly nights. I clock in, I chart, I hold patients' hands at 3 a.m. when they're scared they won't wake up. I don't have degrees from Ivy Leagues or a framed portrait in the staff lounge. What I have is Caleb, my 7-year-old son, and a drawer full of thank you notes from patients no one remembers. When Brooke mentioned the dinner to me in passing, I was genuinely surprised. "Oh yeah, Mom said I should let you know." Staff dinner's Friday night. You're invited, I guess? That, I guess, clung to me like a thorn. But I took it. I hadn't been invited to anything in years. Not to Brooke's med school graduation, not to Thanksgiving the last 2 years, not to my own parents' anniversary party. So even a maybe counts as an invite felt like a crack in the wall. I bought a new dress, simple navy blue, on clearance at Marshall's, and borrowed a pair of heels from a coworker. Caleb stayed with my neighbor that night, and I Ubered to the venue, a hotel ballroom 10 minutes from the hospital. When I walked in, I didn't see a registration table, just clusters of staff chatting in little bubbles of wine glasses and laughter. I spotted my mom immediately, tall, silver blonde, dressed in expensive black satin. She was laughing with a group of board members near the stage. Brooke stood beside her, drink in hand, in a sleek maroon jumpsuit and her signature red lipstick. I raised a hand, a small wave, and smiled. My mom saw me. Her smile faltered for exactly half a second. Then she turned back to the man beside her and continued laughing. Brooke caught my eye, gave me a nod. Not a wave, not a hello, just a nod. Like she was acknowledging a janitor who'd done their job. I stood there awkwardly. No one approached. No one offered me a drink or even asked if I wanted to sit down. I felt like someone had changed the locks on a house I used to live in. Eventually, I found an empty seat near the back, behind the AV crew. I poured myself a glass of water from a pitcher at the buffet table. No name tag, no place card, no welcome. Just silence. When the lights dimmed for the speeches, my name wasn't mentioned. They honored Brooke for her exceptional promise in patient care. My mom gave a speech about leadership and legacy. One of the board members joked about keeping talent in the family, and everyone laughed. I didn't laugh. I just stared at the untouched cheesecake on my plate and wondered if I'd ever stop feeling like a stranger in a room full of people who shared my last name. And maybe I already knew the answer. I told myself it didn't matter. That the absence of a hi or even eye contact was just oversight. That maybe people were too busy, That maybe I was overthinking? That lie lasted exactly 8 minutes. Because 8 minutes in, the mic squealed once, and my mother stepped up to the podium. Towering, graceful, her signature silver bob set like concrete, wearing pearls I hadn't seen since my parents' 25th anniversary. Before we move into dinner, I just want to take a moment to thank the individuals who truly embody the Hamilton mission: professionalism, excellence, and appearance. And that last word? She dragged it out just enough to make it stick like gum on the sole of your shoe. We represent the standard of care, not just in what we do, but how we carry ourselves. People clapped politely. She scanned the crowd, eyes lingering just a second too long on where I sat. Then her mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've come a long way from scrubs and sneakers, haven't we? I almost mistook someone here tonight for housekeeping." The laughter was instant, too loud, too comfortable. I didn't even need to look around to know some people were side-eyeing me. The only woman in the room wearing off-the-rack pumps and a Marshall's dress that clung wrong in all the wrong places. I didn't stand up, didn't storm out. I just gripped the stem of my glass tighter and kept my face blank. Brooke, ever the queen of timing, sauntered over after the speech, glass of wine still in hand. "Cute dress," she said, looking me over like she was inspecting a patient chart she didn't believe. "You still using my old college email? Or are you here to finally ask Mom for that scholarship back?" I blinked. "You mean the one I gave up so you could go to Stanford?" She smiled sweetly. "Touché." Then she walked away before I could say another word. I waited 15 more minutes. For dignity, for dessert, for the illusion that I'd had a nice evening. Then I stood up, quietly, like someone excusing themselves from a church pew. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. Outside, the air was colder than it had been when I arrived. The Uber took longer this time. I stared out the window the whole ride home, trying to blink away the sting in my eyes. When I stepped into my apartment, Caleb was sitting on the floor in his pajamas, coloring with markers and watching cartoons on low volume. My neighbor Janice was dozing on the couch with a half-eaten cupcake in hand. Caleb looked up and grinned. "You're home. Can we do my birthday thing now?" I nodded and smiled as best I could. "You bet, buddy." I microwaved the mac and cheese I'd promised him. We put a candle in a cupcake. He sang to himself, and when he asked, "Did the party you went to have cake too?" I said yes. I didn't tell him about the silence, or the speech, or the laughter. I just watched him blow out his candle and wish for something. Something I hoped was better than what I got. Because deep down, I knew. They didn't forget me. They just decided I didn't count. Monday morning, I showed up to my usual floor at 6:45 a.m., coffee in hand, badge already scanned, hair tied back the way hospital policy prefers. Neat, no flare. But my name wasn't on the board. My assignments, gone. The unit secretary, Jonah, looked up and gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Hey, you might want to check with scheduling." I laughed, confused. "Why?" He didn't answer, just gave a half shrug. 10 minutes later, I was standing in front of Melissa from staffing, a woman who usually greeted me with casual sarcasm and too loud gum popping. This time, she barely met my eyes. "There's been a temporary shift. You're being rotated to East Wing, non-critical, starting today." "Wait," I said, blinking. "That's long-term recovery. I don't work that side." She tapped something on her screen, as if reading from a script. "It's per supervisor request. No disciplinary action. Just adjustment. No warning. No explanation. No heads up." I'd spent the last 6 months on med-surg, built rapport with patients, picked up every extra shift, trained 2 new hires. I was next in line for lead RN on nights. This felt like a punishment. but no one said the word. Instead, I spent my shift tending to a hallway of near-silent patients recovering from orthopedic surgeries and hip replacements. No emergencies, no codes, no interaction, just sponge baths and charting vitals every 4 hours. I felt like I'd been benched, but worse, like someone was trying to fade me out quietly. At 3 p.m., as I was clocking out, I got a call from HR. "We've received a report," the woman on the phone said, tone neutral. "It states that you may have removed supplies, specifically surgical gloves and a bottle of chlorhexidine, from the locked storage unit last Friday night." I blinked. That's not true. I didn't even work Friday night. "We reviewed your badge access logs. You did enter the unit that evening." "Yeah, I picked up Caleb's inhaler from my locker before the weekend. I didn't even go near storage." There was a pause. Then she added, "There's no evidence of theft. But the report is on record. You'll be under observation for the next 30 days. Observation? Like I was contagious. I hung up, stunned, and stood in the staff parking lot with my phone still in my hand. The sun was too bright, the world too normal. I felt like I was screaming underwater. That night, I told myself it was a fluke, a mistake, someone being petty. But the next day, Brooke called. Not to ask how I was, not to check on Caleb. She opened with, "I heard about the glove thing. Rough." "Brooke, I didn't take anything." "I didn't say you did." She sighed dramatically. "But Mom's getting really stressed about appearances. She thinks it's maybe time to start distancing." "From what?" "From the image, Rachel. You're a single mom, working nights. You're around patients most people avoid. It's just messy." There it was, not an accusation, a verdict. And the next morning, I got an email from Caleb's school counselor. Subject: Request for parent meeting, enrollment change. When I showed up, she looked uncomfortable, said there'd been a family recommendation that Caleb might be better served by a smaller private homeschool group, funded by a relative willing to help. I didn't need to guess which relative. They weren't just pushing me out of the hospital. They were trying to erase both of us. I started writing things down the day after HR called. Not in a diary. I wasn't journaling feelings. It was more like building a case file. Dates, names, comments made in passing that were never meant to be traceable. Emails from Brooke, vaguely worded but condescending. Snide remarks from my mom about professional standards. Shifts mysteriously changed. Opportunities passed over. Conversations in the break room that went quiet when I walked in. I bought a spiral notebook at the CVS near my apartment and kept it in my locker, tucked between an old pair of compression socks and Caleb's emergency inhaler. Every time something happened, I'd jot it down like it was patient charting. April 12th, Dr. Whitmore said in stairwell. "Not everyone in scrubs is qualified." Brooke laughed. I was the only one present wearing scrubs. At first, it felt petty. Then it started to feel necessary. Because this wasn't just, "they don't like me." It was a campaign, subtle, consistent, and calculated to make me doubt my own worth. That same week, they moved me to East Wing permanently. I was now full-time on the long-term care floor. Mostly post-op elderly patients, low acuity, slow pace, and too quiet. But one of them wasn't like the others. His name was Marcus Allen, mid-70s, admitted after a cardiac event during a speech at some downtown fundraiser. Tall, silver hair, sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Most patients on that floor drifted, in and out of consciousness, in and out of time. Marcus? He asked questions, watched, listened, and apparently remembered. One evening, after meds were given and the hallway was dim, I came in to adjust his blanket and check his vitals. He looked up at me and said, without preamble, "You're the one who held my hand when I crashed, aren't you?" I blinked. Sir? 3 weeks ago. You were in the ER. Everyone else panicked. You didn't. I hadn't expected him to remember, but I nodded. Well, he said, you probably saved my life. I smiled politely. Just doing my job. He chuckled, low. Then maybe I can do mine. I was confused. Sir? He didn't elaborate, just leaned in slightly and said, You helped me when I had no power. So if one day you need help when they pretend you have none, come back and ask. I didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But 2 days later, I Googled him. Marcus E. Allen, philanthropist, former CEO, primary donor to Hamilton Regional's $11 million research center. Still holds an emeritus seat on the hospital's board of trustees. I stared at his Wikipedia page for a long time. Then I opened my notebook and kept writing. I didn't pack much, just a duffel bag, a box of Caleb's books, and the blue spiral notebook I hadn't let out of my sight in weeks. The lease on our place was still good for another month, but something about the walls had started to close in. Too many nights spent sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much lower I could sink before I'd stop feeling it. That's when I called Carla. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Not because we fought, but because, for most of my life, she was the relative you weren't supposed to mention. My mom always referred to her as unstable. Brooke once called her the one who sells rocks and incense. But I remembered Carla differently. She was the only adult who ever sat cross-legged on the floor with me, who brought art supplies on Christmas instead of clothes, who let me drink soda before dinner and never once asked about my grades. So I called her. Hey, it's Rachel. I know it's been a while, but... She didn't even let me finish. You and Caleb come stay as long as you need. No questions, no hesitation. By Friday, we were at her little house in Hillsborough, a quiet, older suburb about 40 minutes outside the city. Her porch had wine chimes and a hammock chair. Her kitchen smelled like orange peels and cinnamon. It didn't look like where I came from, and that was the point. That night, after Caleb fell asleep on the couch with a coloring book over his chest, Carla poured us each a glass of boxed wine and sat across from me at the kitchen table. She didn't pry, didn't push. She just said softly, I figured it was only a matter of time. I stared into my glass. I thought I could just keep working hard and it would eventually mean something. Carla smiled sadly. Sweetheart, in that house, your worth was never about what you did. It was about what you didn't do. You didn't make waves. You didn't talk back. You didn't outshine her golden child. I swallowed. She told people I was a mistake, that I ruined everything. Carla nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting years to say this out loud. Rachel, your mom didn't marry your dad until you were 3. You know that, right? I nodded. She was seeing someone else before that, a man she was in love with. Got pregnant. With you? He wanted to keep the baby, but she didn't want the scandal. So she left him. Changed her story. Married David a year later and told everyone you were theirs. I blinked. Wait, are you saying you were never the shame? She just needed you to believe that so she didn't have to face what she gave up. Silence filled the room. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy. For the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt angry, but clear. Everything I'd believed about my place in that family, it wasn't just wrong. It was constructed. A narrative built by someone more afraid of judgment than of what that judgment cost her own daughter. I wasn't the crack in their perfect image. I was the glue they used, and then threw away once the portrait was framed. And now, I was done holding it together. Some people plot revenge with shouting matches. I planned mine with printers and calendars. Marcus and Carla didn't need to be convinced, just included. You don't need to burn anything down, Carla told me, stirring her tea. You just need to turn on the lights and let the roaches scatter. So that's what we did. Marcus still had quiet pull inside Hamilton Regional. Not in flashy ways, but in ways that mattered. He still knew who managed facilities, who handled vendor bookings, who processed event permits, and more importantly, which internal budget lines no one ever really checked. It started with a simple email from a generic hospital account. Subject: Invitation, Hamilton Ethics Legacy Event. Location: Founders Hall Auditorium, B Wing. You are formally invited to a special evening honoring ethical leadership, quiet resilience, and legacies that often go unnoticed. Dress code: formal. Attendance strongly encouraged for department heads, board members, and faculty with multi-generational ties to Hamilton Regional. Silence is not absence. Sometimes it's waiting to be heard. There was no sender name, no RSVP address, just a watermark on the digital invite that mimicked the hospital's old logo from the 1980s, the kind only longtime staff would recognize and trust. Carla helped me book Founders Hall under the name Legacy Trust LLC, a shell nonprofit Marcus used to donate anonymously. It cost less than the dress I'd worn to that damn dinner. We booked it for a Friday night, 7 p.m., the same time slot and the same room where the hospital usually held internal awards galas. Poetic symmetry. Then came the hard part, the content. I didn't want spectacle. I didn't want drama. I wanted truth. Plain, documented, unavoidable. Carla spent evenings scanning and organizing every screenshot, voicemail, and email I'd archived over the years. We built a timeline, not just of what had been said to me, but what had been systemically ignored. The missed promotions, the altered evaluations, the suggestion that being a single mom made me less reliable, the HR reports lost in transition, the time Brooke implied I slept with a resident to get a better shift. But we didn't just show my story. Marcus helped me write a second script, one that included dozens of other names. Nurses pushed out quietly, aides never promoted despite years of service, techs fired over attitude without review. All women, all disposable by the standards of the very people who claimed to protect ethics. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every ghost the hospital had erased, and every woman who'd been told, "Don't make trouble." And then, we drafted the final invitation, printed on heavy cardstock, gold-trimmed edges. You once used silence to erase a name. This time, silence will be the witness. The reading of a legacy begins at 7 p.m. sharp. Come dressed accordingly. No one will be called out, but everyone will be seen. We mailed exactly 12 envelopes, to my mother, to Brooke, to the chief nursing officer, to 2 hospital board members, to HR, to 6 other senior staff. No return address, no explanation, just a time, a place, and the weight of implication. Carla looked at me across the table that night and said, "You ready for this?" I didn't hesitate. I'm not doing this to win. I'm doing this to end it. Founders Hall had never looked this quiet, not solemn, quiet. Like the kind of quiet people mistake for calm right before a storm hits. The chairs were lined in perfect symmetry. 40 seats, no stage decorations, no name tags, no food, no flowers, no music. Just one wooden table placed front and center. On it sat 3 things: a thick manila folder labeled Patient Transfer, Redacted, a single anonymous complaint letter, the one accusing me of stealing supplies, a small voice recorder already set to play. At exactly 6:58 p.m., the first one walked in. It was Dr. Patel, board member and longtime friend of my mom's. He wore a puzzled look, like he wasn't sure if he was early or about to be ambushed. Then came Brooke. Hair slicked back, sharp black pantsuit, eyes scanning every corner like she was preparing to sue the room if it breathed wrong. She saw the table, paused, didn't sit. Then my mother walked in. Dr. Karen Whitmore, in her signature ivory coat, heels clicking like punctuation. She took one look at the setup and stiffened. Not visibly, but I knew her well enough to see the micro-reaction in the corner of her jaw. One by one, the others arrived. A few whispered to each other. Some glanced at their phones. No one dared sit in the front row. It was the kind of confusion that breeds unease, the sense that a meeting you thought you were running might not have you on the list of survivors. At 7 p.m. sharp, the lights dimmed. No MC, no announcement, just the soft click of the voice recorder turning on. She's a liability, let's be honest. She's not even one of us. A nurse with a kid and no husband? That doesn't scream leadership. Conbe Joe? Just a low-grade hire, not even worth our last name. It was my mother's voice, clear, steady, professional, not angry, not emotional. Worse, casual. The kind of tone someone uses when ordering coffee or commenting on office supplies. I watched as her eyes narrowed, lips pressing into a thin line. Brooke stiffened next to her but didn't speak. Then the screen behind the table flickered on. Slide 1. A photo of the medical folder, the same one on the table, with highlighted sections showing data altered. Post-op dates changed. Discharge instructions swapped. A case I'd flagged months ago, that HR had buried. Slide 2. A scanned email chain, my request for clarification. Then HR's non-response. Then an internal note, blurred sender name. Let it go. She asks too many questions. Slide 3. The anonymous letter accusing me of theft, next to the timestamp showing I hadn't been on shift that day. Slide 4. A hospital hallway camera still of Brooke, alone, placing an envelope in the admin complaint box. There were no labels, no arrows, no highlighted accusations, just the facts, lined up, undeniable. The air in the room thickened. No one moved. The final slide faded in slowly. A black screen with white text. You erased her story. Tonight, you'll listen to it. And then, the narration began. It wasn't my voice. It was a hired voice actor. Professional, neutral, soft, but firm. A woman's voice telling my story from beginning to now. The shifts lost, the rooms reassigned, the dinner, the HR call, the silence. The narration never used names, never pointed fingers. But everyone in that room recognized their fingerprints. When the recording ended, the lights came back on. Dim, still, enough to see each other's faces, and the guilt that no title could shield. No one clapped, no one spoke. And we weren't done yet. The lights dimmed again, not all the way, just enough to blur the room into shadows. The screen blinked once, then settled on a grainy hospital hallway feed. No faces, no timestamps. Just movement. A woman, in scrubs, hair tied back, gently adjusted an oxygen line on a patient's face. Then repositioned their pillow. Then wiped something from their cheek. That woman was me. The video cut to another moment. 2 nurses laughing in the break room. One of them paused when the door opened. Their smile faded, whispered something. The other glanced up and rolled her eyes. Then it cut to a phone screen. A voicemail playing. She's not a team player. Honestly, it's exhausting having her around. She keeps acting like the rules apply to her too. Then another. I get she has a kid or whatever, but maybe nights aren't for everyone. Some of us show up because we want to be here, not because we need a paycheck. The voices weren't labeled, but they didn't need to be. Then came the patient footage. Still no faces. Just overhead glimpses of bodies in beds, hands being held, blankets being pulled up, nurses leaning in with small touches no one ever trains you for. and voiceovers. She's the only one who listened. She stayed an extra hour just to explain the discharge papers again. She helped me call my daughter. I hadn't heard her voice in months. She made me feel human. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, the same one I'd used to track every microaggression, every shift denial, every time I was told to just let it go. But tonight, I opened it to a blank page. At the top, I wrote, Legacy, Rewritten, and underneath, 1. Nurses Mentoring Group for Single Moms, 2. Quiet Reporting Tool for Internal Misconduct, 3. A chair at every table, for the ones who've been overlooked. This time, the plan wasn't about them. It was about us. About the next Rachel who needed to know that not being included didn't mean you didn't belong. Outside, Caleb rode his bike in lazy circles through Carla's garden, laughter trailing behind him like wind chimes. And inside, I wrote, not to remember, not to accuse, but to build, because the story they tried to erase was now the reason others would finally be seen. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, the same one I'd used to track every microaggression, every shift denial, every time I was told to just let it go. But tonight, I opened it to a blank page. At the top, I wrote, Legacy, Rewritten, and underneath, 1. Nurses Mentoring Group for Single Moms, 2. Quiet Reporting Tool for Internal Misconduct, 3. A chair at every table, for the ones who've been overlooked. This time, the plan wasn't about them. It was about us. About the next Rachel who needed to know that not being included didn't mean you didn't belong. Outside, Caleb rode his bike in lazy circles through Carla's garden, laughter trailing behind him like wind chimes. And inside, I wrote, not to remember, not to accuse, but to build, because the story they tried to erase was now the reason others would finally be seen.